ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Construction Risk Management tutorial. In this tutorial, we will be going through identification and assessing the top 6 risks associated with the excavation and piling project. Then, we develop the likelihood and consequence tables. Finally, we prepare a risk matrix and the risk register table, including 3 top risks identified in the previous section. Watching this video will provide the first-hand experience to identifying risks pertinent to excavation projects. You could find valuable information about site later on in this video as well. This site is the case study for our tutorial and we recommend you to watch this video carefully. This way you could identify the risks relevant to excavation and piling project. Risk identification determines what might happen that could affect the objectives of the project and how those things might happen. The risk assessment process starts with the question, what can go wrong? The identification of what can go wrong entails defining risk and risk scenarios. As you can see in this slide, we identified the risk pertinent to the construction site of excavation project. These risks including underground essential services, falling objects, contact injury, hazardous chemicals, change in site condition, and damage to adjacent structures. To address these identified risks, mitigation actions are required to be taken. For example, to prevent damage to the essential underground services, before commence of any excavation work, a permit to dig should be issued by the relevant authority. Information about the location of essential underground services, including gas, water, telecommunication, and electricity in and adjacent to the workplace must be established before directing or allowing excavation work to commence. Similarly, to prevent falling objects in lifting operations, it is required to ensure that all lifting equipment has the correct certification. Also, we need to ensure that loads are accurately assessed. Risk assessment is the overall process of risk analysis and risk evaluation. It aims at developing agreed priorities for the identified risks. Risk analysis is the systematic use of available information to determine how often specified events may occur and the magnitude of their consequences. Risk evaluation is the process of comparing the estimated risk against given risk criteria to determine the significance of this risk. The assessment process include determines the consequence of each risk, assess the likelihood of those consequences occurring, converts the consequence and likelihood rating to an initial priority for the risk, and develop agreed risk priorities. Consequences are rated in terms of the potential impact on the criteria, often on 5-point descriptive scales linked to the criteria identified in the context. This table provides an example of consequence table for the health and safety aspect of excavation project. Each of these ratings represents ascribed consequences. For example, minor will be considered as no injuries or serious will be regarded as medical treatment. This table provides an example of consequence scales for the environmental risk of excavation projects. Each of these ratings represents the ascribed environmental consequences. For example, catastrophic will be considered as major impact or serious long-term harms to the environment. Generally, you should review carefully the consequence scales you intend to use for each project to ensure they reflect the organization's objective and criteria for success. Likelihoods are rated in terms of annual occurrence on a 5-point descriptive scale showing the likelihood of specific risks arising and leading to assessed level of consequences. As you can see here, we have 5 categories from A to E, almost certain to rare, and each of them has a specific likelihood. Risk matrix is used to combine the likelihood and consequence rating to generate initial priorities for the risks. An example with 3 priority levels is shown in here, including low, medium, and high risk levels. We use 5-point scales for consequences and likelihoods in most circumstances. The main reason that we used these 5 scales is that they are simple to comprehend, easy to use in a workshop environment, and provide adequate discriminations. As you can see here, we have 5-point scale for consequences and 5-point scale for the likelihood table, and 3 different categories for risk from low, medium, and high. We use this risk matrix in designing our risk register. The risk register is commonly used in project management. It can be defined as a framework for managing risk identified by the project staff. For each risk, the register tracks information such as risk item, likelihood, consequence, risk rating, mitigation activity, and also residual risk. You could see the risk register example here. You could also add other columns, right? Risk owner to this table. Mitigation actions are the pre-planned and coordinated actions that are designed to reduce or minimize the short and long-term impacts. For each risk item, appropriate mitigation action provided. As a case in point, for contact injury, training staff, and site induction proposed. These mitigation actions are designed to reduce the risk rating of the project. By implementing the mitigation plan, the risk rating for contact injury reduced from 15 to 4. Similar procedure has been done for hazardous chemical and change in site condition. This way we reduce the impact of the risk on our project. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.